All right, fine. We can talk about Verstappen v Hamilton, round one. Deanna, what are your thoughts?
Can we just kind of go around the room? I want to know what everybody thinks like it should have been. I'll start.
Okay.
I'm gonna say I'm fine with the Hamilton penalty at the penalty level that he got.
Which was two? It ended up being 2 license points, and then
The
obviously
10
the 10
seconds.
10 second.
second.
I'll go next. I'll go
Andy,
next. I think that's two drivers going for the same piece of tarmac. They're effectively almost even. When I saw it in real time, I said, Hamilton punted him. That's a penalty. Open and shut case. And then fortunately, we got the red flag and they were able to kind of show it kind of in slower motion. I was able to look at it 2, 3, 4 different times. Every time I saw it, the less in on penalty I was, to the point where I'm basically saying at this point now, it's two guys going for the same corner. That's racing. I'm sorry, Max got the worst end of it. But that's the arena that he plays in. So, he kind of got not what he had coming, but, he got it. Unfortunately, that was the worst part of it. But I thought it was a fair shot of a move by Lewis there. He'd established a position. It wasn't. It's not cut and dry. It's on the margins, but I'm going to say racing incident.
thank you, Andy. John,
Yeah, when it happened in real time, I think we were trying to remember what angle we. It may have been on like the onboard of Lewis in real time, and then immediately went to Max sliding off. So we were. I didn't even know what happened to Lewis. I assumed Lewis slid off as well, and I was like, "Well, here we go again. This is like a Spain 2016 or whatever." Both the championship leaders take each other out, but to Andy's point, the more that I see this, the more that I put this on a racing incident, in my personal opinion. Now, we had a lot of very interesting and fun and classy conversation in our Discord during the race. I was happy everybody kept it classy, so proud of all you guys. It seemed to me there was obviously a lot of various varying opinions on what happened there, but I got to be honest with you. Like, the more that I see this, the more it just goes racing. I solely expected him to get a penalty just based on what we'd seen in Austria and things like that. But Max pinched him off. I mean, Max is weaving back and forth. I mean, I went back and watched Deanna's reaction, and I think they touched. I think you mentioned it, Deanna. I think they touched like 3 times even leading up to this. A lot of weaving, a lot of really aggressive moves, mainly by Max. And you guys know, I mean, obviously Lewis is my number one guy, but I'm very much a Max fan, for the future. Max was very aggressive. Max has been extremely aggressive this entire season. He and Lewis have gone wheel to wheel, and Lewis has gotten the bad end of the things. He's either backed out or he's been kind of nudged off the track on various occasions. And honestly, I feel like Lewis said, okay, I'm in front of my home crowd, I'm not going to back out this time. And I think what happened was Max pinches him off on the inside. Lewis has already made his decision. The angle was very awkward. I agree with that. I don't think he had a choice in the matter. I think just the nature of where both cars were on the track, it was all. I don't think he was going to make the apex exactly. He wasn't that far off. But when you slow it down, if they both brake at the same time, I think they both make through that corner, personally, because we saw it multiple times in this race between Lewis and other drivers, where both drivers did the appropriate thing, braked at a normal spot in the track, and both made it through. I think Max, you can see he's looking. He's doing one of those numbers. He knows Lewis is there. I'm sure not exactly to the best degree because the mirrors are garbage in these cars, but I think Max said, I'm not braking until he brakes. And I think if they brake simultaneously, I think they stay wheel to wheel throughout the corner. Yeah, Max or Lewis might sneak up through the middle there, and take the lead at least temporarily. But Lewis or Max lives to live another day. As far as the championship goes, if the roles reversed and Lewis has this big of a points lead, I 100% guarantee Lewis backs out of that corner, thinking big picture, which he's done that time and time again in his career. I think Max just expected, because of all the 5 other times this year that they've had wheel to wheel racing, I think he just expected Lewis to back it out. I think Max hit the brakes late, and then suddenly you went from wheel to wheel to front wheel to back wheel, and the rest was history. So, I'm not shocked at all that there's a penalty. I'm glad it wasn't more than a 10-second penalty. I know there was some interesting comments online and from Red Bull aficionados that were calling for much more extreme penalties, which we can get into. But I don't. I think this was a pure racing incident of two guys going head to head in fair competition, and it just again going back to reactions. If Max makes it through that corner, either goes off and loses a position or something like that, we're not even talking about this probably right now, or it's a 2-second talking point. So the only reason it's a penalty or anything else is because of the big shunt, the 52 Gs. If there's no big incident, there's no penalty. So
it was a pretty wide range of emotions I felt within about a turn and a half there. Initially, it was excitement watching those two battle at the front. Pretty awesome. Well, Leclerc was able to hold on to third. And then all of a sudden, there's, the collision. Max goes off. At first, I wasn't sure if both are off or just Max. I see it's just Max. Lewis is fine. Now I'm pissed at pissed at Lewis, maybe cursing him a little bit. But then I realized that Leclerc ended up in the lead out of all. So now I'm just cheering Leclerc, and I kind of didn't care about the incident because I was like, Lewis is definitely getting a penalty. Leclerc's in a great spot here. And then obviously, towards the end of the race, I was mad again because I'm like 10 seconds wasn't enough. Just because I think it's tough. It's tough to stepping back, being as unbiased as I can on the whole situation. It's tough to truly place blame on the incident. I definitely think it leans Lewis. He is the one that collided with him, and he did get the penalty for it. But to me, it's just unfortunate that he could cause that and still end up winning the race. But that is what it is, and that's Formula One. He was able to overcome the penalty he got, and it is what it is. So I think it's more Lewis's fault than Max's. But Lewis shouldn't get arrested for assault or for trying to kill Max or something.
yeah.
It's nobody's corner. They're racing for a reason, and sometimes this happens.
We were talking about pre-race again, and I'm a Max fan too. So the first thing after the dust settled and I saw it was okay and everything else, first thing that came to mind is if the roles are reversed, if Max is on the inside and Lewis is on the outside and Lewis is pinching him and they're both going into this awkward corner there, do any of you think honestly that Max is going to back out of that corner?
Not a chance.
Yeah.
No.
And I think we had the same result except Lewis is in the wall.
Well, and we...
So, that's why I go racing incident, because it's just two drivers that no one's going to back out of that, not when you got a championship of this nature.
And we talked about, even in our preview, the role reversal that had to happen with both of these teams between Red Bull and Mercedes. Mercedes actually got more aggressive over the course of the weekend, to their credit. And Red Bull, which you would have thought would have said, okay, we can let Lewis have one and we're still fine. I'm 33 points up, but that's not what got Max there. So I'm not surprised at all that that's what ended up happening. So, again, like I said, it's two guys going for the same corner. I think Lewis was just playing in the arena that Max built. Like I said, it's racing incident. It happens.
Yeah, like I said, worst case scenario, I think Max finishes second today and still has a race worth of championship lead ahead of Lewis.
It would have been, 27 points difference?
Yeah.
So it would have been,
Yeah, something like that. So an entire race still ahead. And again, that's why I think, if the roles are reversed, like we've seen in past years with Lewis from a championship points perspective, I 100% in my mind think that Lewis backs out of that and thinking big picture. That's something he's been smart about over the years, is knowing when he has to fight and when he's thinking, okay, let me just minimize damage. It's not my day to day. And we've given Max a lot of credit. I know I personally have. I used to call him a hothead and everything else, and I feel like he's matured significantly. For a guy that's extremely aggressive, he's gotten. Well, I think we were just talking about this a week ago. I feel like for a guy that's extremely aggressive, he's gotten away with really no contact. He's been quite clean. We were talking about the F1 2021 driver ratings and the 99 awareness or whatever it was. And Max has been really clean, yada yada. And then here we are 7 days later, or whatever it is, and I felt pride just happens to bite one of these guys today, unfortunately. So. I don't know. It's a racy deal. If there's a gap, you got to go for it, unfortunately.
Yeah, so to explain why I'm okay with the penalty bit, honestly, they could call it a racing incident and I'd be fine with that as well. But I think you could make the case that Lewis understeered into that corner, which is why the collision happened, and you could put that to driver error if you want to explain the penalty out that way. And I think it is probably 60-40 Lewis's fault. So that's why I'm okay, it's okay. But again, it's just the stewarding is just so it's just a disaster. Because I mean, if it's Lewis is the one that crashes out, Verstappen gets a penalty, and there's no doubt in my mind on that one. Like if somehow the way that collision works, it's Lewis on the like worse end. I think Max is getting a penalty as well. But it's just like there's been a lot of arguments about does the punishment match the crime. I don't want to say crime, but like that was such an intense wreck. Like, and everybody's like he needs to be disqualified because their wreck was so bad. But I don't think
it's never worked that way. It's never worked.
No.
Yeah,
it absolutely hasn't. But I think I kind of lost where I was going with this point, but I think like Toto's talking about this diagram stuff that the FIA has, which we've never seen before. I've never seen it at least. So I'm like, where is this? And it's like, are we adjusting the penalties per corner speed? Because in a slower corner that happens, nobody cares. Like, is it just because we're in a fast corner? Do I need to adjust per different corner? I mean, it seems that way as we did in Austria. So can we have a different rule book for each separate corner? Like, it's just getting confused. Like everything's just, it's so up to interpretation. And it just makes it very confusing as a fan. And it leads to a lot of these super heated discussions later because nobody knows what's going on or what we should do, or does the outcome matter at all? It probably, I don't think it should. But it does seem to be taking into account. So is that what we're doing? Is for everything? Like it doesn't make any sense to me anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like if this happens in France, where we have a lot of runoff area, again, maybe Max spins. I think if this happens in France, it's definitely no more than a 5-second penalty because he doesn't hit anything. You know, it's one of those. But I 100% agree. Everything that we've seen recently has been outcome, and that's what drives me crazy. And the driver was self-penalized and everything else. And if that's what we want to do, we got to be consistent, or we got to say it's a penalty or it's not. I mean, coming out of Austria, I honestly couldn't tell you what's a penalty and what's not anymore, because there was some things that blatantly, I feel like, honestly, pretty much every penalty they announced, other than maybe the second Perez-Leclerc incident, I feel like was a little odgy-bodgy there. But everything else, I felt like was just good hard racing and guys going for the corner there. But because prior years we've called a penalty there, we gotta be do something similar. And it's all about reaction. It's all about what happens post the collision that determines the fate of these drivers. And it drives me mad, honestly, that we see this. We talk about this every single freaking week.
I mean, I think I don't no longer know when I see that investigation logo come up what the heck they're going to do or why they're going to do it until it's kind of over and done with. And then they do these investigated after the race, and then 4 hours later you finally get the decision. That was at least, if nothing else, we got the decision in the middle of the race and it was able to be taken care of. We didn't find this out after 8 hours and it changes the result, and everybody who was in the stands couldn't believe what they were seeing. That's about the only nice thing I can say about that whole situation. But yeah, I mean, I miss Charlie Whiting is basically what I keep coming back to, because, you could just tell, like, all you would have to do is go into a room and Charlie Whiting would have yelled at him and it probably would have, clashed heads, and that would have been the end of it. But here it's all open to interpretation because it's different people doing it every week. And whenever you ask somebody to look at something, the natural inclination is, I should do something about this. Once you refer it to another group, it's that much harder. And I'll also say, I actually felt bad for Michael Massey on this, because, I mean, his phone or email or whatever else had to have exploded. And it was both of them. And I wanted to yell at Toto and Christian at the same time. I'm like, dude, it's not even in his hands anymore. He said it's in the steward's hands. You might as well stop talking.
I mean, if you go back to even the George Sainz situation, if you have to call both drivers in and talk to them to figure out is it a penalty or not based on what they tell you, I don't think that's a penalty. If you can't decide based on what actually happened on track, then it's probably a racing incident. If you need to get a whole bunch of people's opinion involved and do it after the race and everything else. So yeah, I am happy that at least they made a decision when they did it. It wasn't like a Monza situation. I felt like the timing of that penalty, last year was a little bit questionable. and had a little bit too much of the impact of the race about when the penalty came out post restart and everything. I felt like this was a decent amount of timing and gave Lewis an opportunity to hopefully come back and make up for it. But I mean, the back and forth between Toto, I mean, I enjoy these FIA radios now that we're getting now, but I'm just like, I'm listening to Toto and Christian, and it's just like two little like school kids like complaining, to mommy, oh, he did this, he did that, it's their fault, it's my fault. It's just it was interesting to say the least, for lack of a better term.
Deanna, you started this conversation, so you can have the last comment here.
Oh, I was just gonna kind of add on to that. I just think when they note an incident, there should be you have X amount of time to serve said penalty. Because it's ridiculous. It's just, and again, it just makes the whole situation more confusing and it's not enjoyable for me. I hate every single time it looks like there's going to be a penalty, because then we got to have these discussions. Is it a penalty? Is it not a penalty? And there's no like guide and everybody's just kind of saying what they feel. And that's just it. That's it. It's just your opinions. And there's not a hard and fast rule anywhere, it feels like.
Yeah. So Andy, I was asked, what did you feel, Andy, about the Christian Horner post comments and the Instagram thing?
Oh, well, I mean, Max knows what he's doing. He knows when he picks up his phone. He's emotional. They're all in the red. Like, I would have wanted to play poker against Helmut Marko, Christian Horner, and Max Verstappen today because I could have easily taken their money. Because they were clearly all on tilt. And once Marco says that stupid thing about, oh, that should be a race ban, that gave everybody permission to go off the deep end. And once you do that, Max, when you have the legion of fans, you have the Orange Army that's going to do what you knew what it was going to do because you were pissed. All you had to do was say, look, I'm fine. I'm sorry that it happened. I'll try better next time. And that could have been it. And that would have diffused. Instead, Twitter turned into an absolute crap show this evening. I can't even be on the damn thing anymore. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard threats against people. We've heard pretty despicable racial comments today, all based on, and I put blame on all parties, Toto included on this. So I'm definitely not leaving Mercedes out of this. But yeah, I mean, I agree, Andy. Like, I think he could have said, I'm okay. I don't agree with it. We'll talk about it. We'll settle it on track, or, just something like that. Keep it, the old, like, do your talking on track situation. I think that this war of words between everyone, the race ban, Christian calling it a dangerous move, saying that there's never been an overtake there in the history of the sport, which
Cops
to your point,
corner,
Andy, pre-race, that used to be turn
Cops
one.
Corner in the old layout was turn one. There have been lots of overtakes.
And we saw a lot of overtakes today that did just fine between people when both parties did the respectable thing. I was just a little taken back by I think everything that we saw post race, and honestly, I hope this doesn't turn into a European football style incident where we got fans going after fans, and it's just
no. I mean, we're in the middle of one of the best seasons ever. Let's not ruin it by being dumb.
And guys, and like I know we have a lot of new fans of the sport, and I love our new fans. I know there's some people out there that dislike the DTS people, yada yada.
Oh no,
you're love
all
you.
Welcome.
Come on, welcome to our show. You're starting where we all started. We're learning, and as we go. But if you look back at every single like amazing era in Formula One history, what we saw today has happened multiple times in every single one of them. There has always been a clash between the two top guys, and generally speaking, one or both of them have ended up in the fence on multiple occasions during those eras, and it's just part of the sport. If you don't want guys to race, then we'll just flip a coin and decide a championship. If you can't say you want on-track action, you want those drama. You can't say Netflix, I want to do this series and spin off the drama, and then when we have it, say, I don't want that anymore. Like, you got to pick a side, and if you've been around racing long enough, it's going to be. I mean, the first thing I saw was, is he okay? As soon as I saw he's okay, let's move on to whose fault it is, yada yada. Like, the wrecks are going to happen in sports, and obviously we want everyone to be safe, but this is a part of race. This is a dangerous sport. If we don't want the danger, we'll just do it on sim. You know, we can all be esports drivers, but this is real world. There are situations that are unavoidable. I just, this is just part of Formula One, and it's happened since 1950, and it's going to continue to happen in the future. If the sport continues, and we're going to get closer racing next year. Let me tell you what, we're probably going to get a lot more of this, even more coming up, because we got an IndyCar style racing where drivers are even more wheel to wheel. There's going to be contact, unfortunately, and it's the nature of the beast.
So I'll close this out with I know Tom Cruise was there, and Robinson out of Days of Thunder. Robinson is racing.
Yeah, I mean, just to recap, I think like a lot of things, we need some perspective in a lot of these situations. Like we need some of the war of the words between drivers Lewis and Max, and even like the team principals, because that's part of the drama. That's part of what draws us in from race to race. It brings more intensity into the races. But of course, there is that fine line. Max's comments on Instagram, probably a tad far with some of that. I would have rather him just said, "Hey, I'm good." Make it clear that you're not going to forget that this happened, but you're going to sell it out there on track. Get the fans excited that you're okay. You're going to come back and fight for what you think is yours. That's what we want to see. But sometimes it just gets taken too far. And then, I mean, when you add in Twitter and social media, it can get really crazy, really fast. And that's unfortunate because, like you guys have said, this happens in racing, any series of racing. Like collisions happen, clashes happen, but that's part of the excitement too. That's part of the reason we're here and we watch every weekend. So, this is what we want. So don't complain when we get what we want. You can't have it both ways, unfortunately.